One last thing that I did want to talk about, if people don't want to do reverse osmosis, is bottled water. And I found this quite interesting when I went down the rabbit hole about it last year, because a lot of the waters that I thought were really good contained uranium and other radioactive elements. Now, the thing to also realize here is that all of us are exposed to radiation. There's background radiation in everything we do in our lives. But if you are drinking a water that has a higher concentration of radioactivity in it, then that could increase your exposure to background radiation, and that may not be a great thing. So this is just an article about the amount of radiation that we are exposed to every year from natural sources. So 2.2 millisieverts every year from background radiation, radiation from sources like sun, radioactive earth, rocks, small amounts pass up in the food chain, and one chest x-ray is 0.02 millisieverts. A CT scan, interestingly, is about 7 millisieverts, so it's quite high. A transatlantic flight exposes you to 0.1 millisieverts, around 5 times the radiation of a chest x-ray. Mammogram is 0.6 millisieverts, same as dozen flights across the Atlantic. Again, a CT scan here is 7 millisieverts. You don't want to have that much radiation many times a year. Workers in a nuclear power plant get 20 millisieverts. Radiographers get about 20, probably not great. Astronauts on the International Space Station exposed to 100 millisieverts. That's 20 CT scans, 20 mammogram, 250 mammograms, or 7,500 chest x-rays. Probably not a good thing. It takes a dose of 1,000 millisieverts in a short period of time to induce acute radiation sickness. That's really bad. Heavier exposure of 10,000 millisieverts can result in cell and neurological damage, even death. That would be a catastrophic event. So I want to put some of this stuff in context, because one of these articles actually does show what the equivalent millisievert increase would be if you were drinking some of these waters. So you can see here on the CDC website, 0.035 millisieverts of cosmic radiation if you were to fly within the United States. Pretty small amount, but they actually then break it down for the average annual dose for natural sources of radiation. The inhalation, 2.28 millisieverts, 73% just from inhaling, I guess cosmic dust, radioactive dust. Then you have some from the internal by ingestion, 0.29 millisieverts. Well, as you'll see, drinking some of these bottled waters, you could get much more than 0.29 millisieverts of radiation. Whether or not that's important remains to be seen. Terrestrial exposure is 0.21 millisieverts. So just wanted to put all of that in context for you guys as we begin to look at some of these waters. So what waters do we think about? Well, let's start with this one, which is the natural radioactivity content in Italian bottled mineral waters. Believe me, I love these guys as much as you. But if you look at the results, you can see here that some of the waters like San Pellegrino, I can't highlight it, but look at the gross beta in San Pellegrino. Beta are beta particles, which are essentially like electrons. It's 487 plus or minus 162. That's a pretty big range. I mean, some of these are even higher. The highest one on here is 1,500, 1,300, but some of these are even lower, 90. And a lot of these Italian bottled waters I've never seen. They have all these really Italian amazing names. San Stefano, San Benedetto. I can get that one here in Costa Rica. That one's 129, but San Pellegrino's 487. But here's one called Tocca, which is 1,300. I don't know if I'd want to drink that one. Vitisanella. So if you like Italian bottled mineral waters, or you live in Italy, you may want to go through these lists and look at the alpha and beta on these mineral waters and see. Now, one thing that's quite interesting is I don't think we actually know what the radiation of most tap water is. It would be interesting to kind of look into that as well, but I think it's much less than many of these mineral waters. So we can also then go to another article which looks at, I have all sorts of mineral waters here. So here is radioactivity in bottled mineral waters in general. And you can see here they are looking at France, Portugal, and Spain. So we're spanning the gamut of mineral waters. There's all kinds of different things. They have alpha and beta, pretty similar to what we saw from the other study, but I think this is the beta Q per liter, and I believe the other one was beta Q per milliliter. So these units are going to look a little differently, but you can see that some of the ones I can get here in Costa Rica, the Font d'Or, I can see how much alpha and beta there is here. Just wanted you guys to know that many of these mineral waters do contain these things, and that Gerolsteiner's somewhere in the middle when you look at it. compared to other mineral waters. That one is interesting because it was just some of the things I find here. Also, Vichy Catalan is one that we find here a lot and is treasured here. And, people say, oh, it's great because it's quite salty. But if you look here in the BQ per liter and the dry residue, and you look at this equivalent millisieverts per year for Vichy Catalan, it's 1.36. And here's another one that's 2.26, and I've never seen this Pedras Salgadas mineral water, but you could get 2.26 extra millisieverts a year just by drinking this mineral water, if that was the only thing you drink, if you were sipping it in your champagne flute overlooking your Italian or French or Spanish villa. But anyway, certainly here in Costa Rica, it is possible that people would drink quite a bit of Vichy Catalan if that were all they were doing. And whether or not this extra 1.36 millisieverts per year is worth it is questionable, but I chose to try and minimize my exposure to uranium, or at least other radioactive particles, which are a combination of alpha and beta. So one more article here that I think is interesting. This is the contribution of uranium in the drinking water to the daily uranium intake of humans, a case study from northern Germany. If you can read German, there's a translation here, or the full German, at least in the abstract. But you can see here, you can see tap water, you can see groundwater wells, and they look at the amount of uranium, and they're looking at the amount of uranium in bread, meat, vegetables, coffee, tea, fruits, and then beverages, such as bottled mineral waters, which can have significant amounts of uranium in them. And then some of these German ones like Gerolsteiner have a uranium concentration of 1.9 micrograms per liter, not insignificant. Some of these other ones, Saskia, 10.4, contribution of uranium in mineral water to the daily uranium intake. So for instance, Gerolsteiner here was 50% of the uranium intake in this German study. That's significant. If you just stopped drinking Gerolsteiner, you'd have 50% less uranium, which is radioactive element. I would do that. Look, 84% from Saskia, Leislinger, Font Randa. They sound so German and exciting. Axtaler, 58%. Some of them are quite low, though. So just to know that if you're drinking these German mineral waters, they do contain uranium. Some people, when I did the first video, said, I think Gerolsteiner is worth it because of all the minerals in Gerolsteiner. Again, I'm not convinced that water is where we should be getting most of our minerals from in the first place. I think we should be getting them from meat and organs and fruit and other food. One mineral water that I do like, again, there's no affiliation here, is Mountain Valley. I pulled their water quality reports, and if you believe what they say, then their total dissolved solids are 220. I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that when I put water through a reverse osmosis filter, it ends up at about 13 total dissolved solids. So it's taking out all these minerals. But in this mineral water, that is Mountain Valley, you have calcium, magnesium, and potassium as the minerals, probably some trace minerals. It is a pH of 7.3. It's not super alkaline, but then they're looking at the amount of other contaminants. These are contaminants that are found in many of the tap waters that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, bromo, chloroacetic acid, et cetera. None of those were detected in Mountain Valley spring water. Great. Radiologicals, they actually talk about uranium, none detected. Great. That made me happy. The gross alpha and gross beta were none. That's incredible. There's a little bit of radium, at least the variance, but nothing major. And you can see here aluminum, antimony, arsenic, nothing. The only thing here, there was a little bit of barium, a little bit of bromide, a little bit of calcium, like they say, no cyanide, thankfully, and 0.1 milligrams per liter of fluoride. So that is probably 1/10 as much fluoride as your drinking water, but it still contains some. Then they go on to do lead, none, no lead detected, magnesium, a little bit, manganese, mercury, nickel, not much, a little bit of sulfate, no thallium. So as far as I could tell, I mean, gosh, this Mountain Valley is pretty darn clean. So if you were going to drink look at all these not detected, not detected, not detected, again, this podcast should be sponsored by Mountain Valley, but it's not. If you want to drink a spring water, Mountain Valley would probably be the one that I would select. The silica is fairly low in Mountain Valley, but if we believe silica is beneficial, I simply can't find a good spring water that has moderate amounts of silica that isn't contaminated with other things. That's a whole separate podcast that I've done already. But the takeaway there was that if we believe silica is beneficial for removing aluminum from the human body, you would want a very clean water that is very high in silica. Perhaps Fiji water is like that, but then Fiji water has a bunch of plastic contaminants in it. I just can't get behind drinking water in plastic every day either. So what I do for my water, as I said in the beginning, is I use a reverse osmosis filter to filter the water from my sink. That essentially creates 13 part per million water with really nothing in it of any significance. Hopefully, it's not very radioactive coming out of my tap. I should think about testing that. I'm almost doing no bottled water anymore, and I don't think I need to remineralize it. Maybe some of you will convince me otherwise, but I think I'm getting minerals just when I swallow seawater, which I definitely do every single day in the ocean and in my food. And it seems to be going well. I like the taste of it, and I think that, like I said, Berkeys don't cut it. Carbon filters don't cut it. The filters in your fridge don't cut it. Don't ignore fluoride in your water. Don't fear it, but I don't think you need it to prevent tooth decay in your children. I would feed them meat and organs, either fresh or desiccated, like we make at Heart and Soil Supplements, if you need some more of the fat soluble vitamins in your life.